Oh my gosh. And I can't even tell you how many times like I have sat back and thought, I'm so grateful that I launched the very first time that I did. And we'll chalk that one up in the failed launch category. But
Pretty
I'm
normal.
so, I mean, just so grateful that and I tell people this all the time when they ask about launching a product, launching a book, launching a
Mhm.
program, anything. It's like once you do it the very first time, you no longer have this fear of like, I have to do this launch and I have no idea what's going to
Right.
happen. I don't know what to expect. And so there's a lot of people listening that are either in the process of launching their podcast, they're launching their online business, and they're just really in their own head.
Yep.
So, can we talk a little bit about like, is there any one specific advice that you give to your first time launchers? Like, they're brand new, maybe to the industry of having something online or creating content, anything like that that comes to mind for a brand new launcher?
Yeah. Well, the first time you do anything, I always try to remind people it's really to validate an offer. That's just even if you have, I've had people have like 6-figure first launches. That does happen. It's not normal, but it does happen, and that's exciting when it does. But normally, it's to validate the offer. It's to prove that whatever thing you're putting out there is an actual solution to a problem that your people have. So that's important to keep in mind. Number one is that, and number two, I would say, is you have to think about the goals that you're setting, and they need to be realistic. That's another thing that I think people get. That's what causes some mindset issues for people, is they're not really basing their monetary or financial goals or whatever goals off of something that's really a good metric to that you can actually somewhat predict, I guess. And that can be difficult for people. And then they think they failed when really that goal that wouldn't have been achievable from the beginning. So if you have, for example, a very small email list or no email list, like you can't expect to have the ideal that you're going to sell 3,000 people into your course. I mean, magic happens, but it's pretty unlikely that's going to happen the first time, and that's okay. So I see a lot of first time people who are really beating themselves up because they only had 6 people join, and I'm like, but you had like 100 people on your list. That's like freaking great. 6 is really good. So it's a starting. That means it's a validated offer, and now you're going to like use that information to take you to the next step. So that's the big one, I would say. Don't
Yeah.
No more unrealistic goals.
And like, where do you think that comes from? Do you think it comes from because I know that I've been in the online space about since 2017, 2018. Like whenever I really was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn. I'm going to invest in programs that are going to teach me
Yeah.
how to do this really well. And oftentimes I will see some testimonials come out that are just like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want. I want this gajillion-dollar business because they did it on their first try and I can do it too. So do you think that, some of this mindset of unrealistic expectations comes from unrealistic testimonials? Like, or where do you think that that's like grounded in?
It could be unrealistic testimonials. It could be that they're looking at the wrong thing.
Mm,
So I think sometimes when people get into, it could be a program or something that they're gonna, and I'm not gonna call out any specific program because it's marketing is important, and testimonials are you should use testimonials, everybody. Like that's important for marketing. But sometimes when you are newer, especially when you don't have an audience anywhere, whether or if it's newer, it's very common for people to look at someone else who's maybe been in the game a little longer or who's launched this insert thing 4 or 5 times. Or I have had a client who they did have an audience because they had spent many years building that audience up and then launched a course. So they actually
mhm.
did a lot of legwork, and that's why they had more success the first time around, which is not always the case. So I think that it's a lot of comparison that happens with people. I hate to call it imposter syndrome, but maybe it's just they're looking at other things And you don't know what somebody else, like, especially somebody like Amy Porterfield, for example, she's been in business a long time, has been doing this launch many, many years, and has a lot of people to help her and support her. And she's constantly learning from all of her launches, and then taking that information and implementing it and improving it. And so she hasn't really changed a lot of what she's offering. She's simply taking the information and improving it and improving it and improving it. And that's probably what it is you're looking at somebody else who might be further along than you are and thinking that you can get there the first time, when that's maybe not the case. And that's okay. Yeah. It's a long game. It's a marathon. It's really not a sprint.
Well, you bring up a good point too, because, we've both learned from Amy, and she's someone that comes up here a lot on the podcast. People are like, oh, I would love to be on her podcast and like talk to her and be part of her community and all these things. But I know something that she teaches, and that is, sticking to minimal offers and not having 17 different products and programs and all the things. So kind of what are your thoughts if someone has one product, they launch it, it fails, and then they come to you and say, okay, Carrie, I want to do another launch, but I don't want to do that ever again. Like, that was terrible. I don't like, they have this PTSD from a launch. Like, does that ever happen where somebody's like, I just want to ditch this product. It's not working. I'm going to do something else.
It may not be the product. It could be, that's why you have to have a pretty good process in evaluating all the metrics of what happened, and doing I know James Wedmore teaches this too, but debriefing your launches is really critical. So looking at the numbers don't lie. So paying attention to the numbers. That's why when you set goals, you want to base it off of, numbers that are realistic. And if you don't, then you're going to be disappointed. So, but doing a really good debrief of everything. And if it doesn't go the way you wanted it to, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a failing offer. You need to really examine the offer. And if you keep changing the offer out, you're just going to have the same experience over and over again, because it takes time to really build up the messaging and build up the audience and make sure that you're speaking to the true problems that they have, and you're giving them a great, easy solution with your offer. And it takes time to build know, like, and trust with people. And you owe people that to continue to do that. So if you just keep throwing in different things, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. That's a very Southern thing to say, by the way. So I just realized you're going to totally understand what I just said, because you're in Texas. But it doesn't it's just masking the problem with something else. So, but yeah, people do that a lot, where they'll throw it out because it wasn't a good idea. Now, there are times to do that. Don't get me wrong. There are appropriate times where we had the wrong offer, and we figure that out by debriefing, and we can change the offer a little bit and pivot. But I'm not a fan of pivoting just because I'm bored or it doesn't work. No, like, I'm more of a fan of like really trying to stick with it the long haul.